Welcome, everybody. It's really so lovely to see so many faces, and especially when you've been in small groups and you come back and all the smiling faces. Really lovely to see everybody here. So thank you all for your presence. So today is a chance for us to hear stories of impact of people who have been using time to think or the thinking environment and creating thinking environments in their organizations, in their spaces, in their homes, in their lives. And it's a chance for us to learn from each other. So it's a peer learning experience that we're going to be having today. So we have six wonderful stories that people are going to share with us in the plenary. And we know that a lot of people also have their own stories. So we are also going to have breakout sessions and small group conversations. So it's really important that all the voices are heard. That's one of the concepts of time to think. So we hope that this is going to be a really wonderful experience where all the voices are heard and that you come away inspired with stories of impact. Thanks, Louise. I'm going to hand over now to Rosie, who's going to just give a brief introduction to what time to think is. You're on mute, Rosie.
Promise you these buttons. So time to think originates from the work of Nancy Klein, and Nancy says the quality of everything we do depends on the quality of thinking we do first. And so our responsibility as leaders, but I extend it to all of us, is to create an environment where people can think really well for themselves. And one of the things that determines my quality of thinking is how I'm being treated by the people I'm with as I do my thinking. So the thinking environment really is a way of being with each other. They are components, they are building blocks that we put together. For example, attention is one of the components of the thinking environment, which calls us, which is a hard thing for a lot of us to do, to not interrupt people while they speak. And so all of these components are about creating a thinking environment that allows the other person, that also allows me to do my best thinking. And Nancy's written 3 beautiful books. She's written 4 actually, from Time to Think to More Time to Think to the latest book, The Promise. And the promise is, I will not interrupt you. And she says if we do one thing in our lives is make that commitment to not interrupt people while they think. And so today is an opportunity, as Dina said, to hear about the lived experience of time to think, because more than anything else, it's about how we feel when we're in a thinking environment and the places our thinking is able to go with that, what we call in this space, delicious attention that allows us to think beyond the limits of everyday thinking. Thanks, Louise.
Thank you, Rosie. That is such a beautiful reminder about what this work is all about. And many of us on this call, I'm looking at the faces, have stories about how this work has changed our life. Wade has just posted something in the group chat. I can't wait for us to hear Wade's story. We're going to have many stories from people in the community, and we're going to start by Ridwan Samadin. So Ridwan Samadin is the principal of Kaname Primary in Grassy Park. Ridwan and I started Partners for Possibility. The whole Partners for Possibility journey started at Kaname Primary. And as a result of Ridwan being introduced to time to think through Partners for Possibility, he has become a Partners for Possibility, a time to think coach and facilitator. And that school and that community is so lucky to have a leader who really understands what it means to be a thinking partner. So Ridwan, we are very, very keen to hear your story, and I'm going to invite everybody in the room to listen with delicious attention to Ridwan. And even more, when we listen, to really listen to learn. You know how sometimes we listen to defend or to respond or to do something else? And then the invitation today is to listen to learn. So we are ready to listen, to learn. The Redwan, and I just want to say to everybody, Redwan sent me a note saying, could I show my slides? I said, no, we don't want your slides. We want you. So he's not showing slides. He's showing up as a beautiful, authentic human being. And we are looking forward to hearing your story. Over to you, Redwan.
Thank you, Louise. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Redwan, and I read one book at a time. And currently, I have only read chapter 1 of The Promise That Changes Everything. And this is Nancy Klein's latest offering. And I would like to encourage you to read a book, one book at a time. So firstly, I think it will be remiss of me not to thank Louise for having introduced me to the Time to Think philosophy. And I think it is particularly the Time to Think philosophy that has resonated with me, and it has changed my life and my purpose of life forever. Because I firmly believe, and you've heard this many, many times, that the quality of everything human beings do depends on the quality of the thinking we do first. And if you are principal of the school, there are so many things which you have to consider, which you have to ponder upon, and you don't always have the time and the luxury to make a quick or a rash decision. Or sometimes you have to make a quick or a rash decision, but you actually need to try deliberately develop that muscle just to slow down, because every decision that you make is going to have a consequence. And so I live by that slogan, or that quote of Nancy that says that the quality of everything we do as human beings depends on the quality of the thinking we do first. And Nancy Klein further says the following, and she says that the thinking environment can be used as a tool to fight oppression. And I want to add that the thinking environment can be used as a tool to build humanity and to restore human dignity. And so what the thinking environment has done for me, I'm an African, and I've got the blood of Ubuntu flowing through my veins. And I am because you are, and you are because we are. And I think we as Africans have lost that. And so what I've done in Canada Primary, I've thought about the circle of courage of the indigenous peoples of America, where they have 4 quadrants, and they say, we develop a sense of belonging, a sense of mastery, a sense of independence, and a sense of generosity. And me showing up today, showing that I want to belong to this group, I want to master my own independent thoughts, and I want to have my own sense of generosity by showing up and to sharing my gifts and my talents. And this is what we as human beings need to do and ought to do. And so if we really want to be concerned or show our passion for our children specifically, we need to upskill them in the thinking processes. And so many years ago, when I heard about the thinking environment through Louise, I met a marvelous lady called Marvelous Maurice, and she did a one-day course. I then attended so many one-day courses. And then eventually I decided it can't just be a one-day course. We need to move further. And eventually I became a coach and facilitator. And in that very first year, Louise enrolled Alison. And Alison trained our entire team at that time, about 10, 12, 13 years ago, in the thinking environment. And at that time, I was responsible for a team that was fragmented. We had political running battles at our school. We were disconnected. In fact, some people here on the staff who still here today said, that man doesn't know what he's doing. Please take your children out of that school. And we had an organization that didn't have a purpose, that didn't have a why. And Louise came and started the process of vision and mission building, so much so that we ended up with the slogan that we wanted to be the school of choice in our community. We didn't know what it meant at that time. But slowly, as we set about changing the mindsets of people, and I believe Time to Think was the key thing that assisted us in doing so, because we started seeing people, hearing people, and paying attention. And that's sort of changed the whole ethos of what the school was all about. We trained, I then, after being trained, I then went further and retrained the staff, because you have staff turnover. So I've been able to train my staff. My staff, in turn, they have taken it into the classrooms. And yes, Louise, you didn't want me to show, but it's fine. I have little pictures of little grade R sitting in thinking pairs, having a moment, sharing with one another. And from grade R right up to grade 7, I have done a little bit of deeper training with my grade 7s, and I trained them and schooled them into the thinking environment with the notion that the quality of everything that they need to do is going to depend on the thinking that they do first. And yes, we have challenges, and we always will have challenges. So to further unpack what we are doing, the first thing we did was to throw out all the tables out of our staff room. Our latest name for the staff room is now the wellness room. No red pens allowed in this room. We have brought in couches and comfortable chairs. We built little tables so that we sit in a permanent round. When they enter the staff room, it's square, but it's meant to be a circle. And this is how we engage with one another. We pose a question when we have a challenge, and we ask them to respond, and we honor each and every voice. Fridays at Kanamaya this morning, we draw a name from a bowl or a hat, and then each member of staff then gets to appreciate that person. This morning was Soraya's turn, and after the session, she came to me and said, "Thank you, sir." She went to the deputy and says, "I never thought that you thought so highly of me." You know, people have perceptions and assumptions, and when people verbalize their innermost, fresher thoughts that is authentic, and just honor people in that way, it has changed the ethos of our school. And Louise knows that nowadays we can say that we have a school that is moved towards greater organizational health, simply by practicing a thinking environment. And so one of the most beautiful memories, and there are so many, but Louise will bear that she was at the launch of our beautiful school hall. And while this hall was about to be handed over, I gathered staff in a circle and I said to them, "I want you to dream and I want you to imagine." And I said to them, yesterday was our launch. I want each one of you around this room to tell me what was the beautiful gem or gift that you saw yesterday as we launched this hall. And so each member contributed in a dreamlike way about what stood out for them. And we harvested all those little gems and we put it pen to paper, and we planned in what I would call one of the most beautiful days or launches that the school has ever seen. And so whenever we have a function or a concert, this is how we go about getting the people, each one feeling that they belong, that they have their own independent thoughts, that they can master their skills, and that they need to be generous. The days of fighting and arguing and having long meetings, no longer at our beloved Kanamaya Primary School. Yes, we don't have the resources that we would want, but that's not important. We have the human beings, the citizens that is showing up each and every day to make a difference in the lives of our children. And we firmly believe in the words of our former president, Mr. Nelson Mandela, when he says that a great head and a great heart is a formidable combination. And so that is what the time to think environment does for one, if you practice it fully, that you connect your head and you connect your heart. And then in that way, the world will be a better place. So that's my 5 cents.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ridwan. I'm sure you've all been inspired, and please do share your thoughts. Ridwan unfortunately has to leave us, but if you've put your responses to what you've heard in the chat, then we can share that with Ridwan later. Every person in this room is thinking, oh, I want to learn more. So we'll look for opportunities to learn more. We've got 6 of these stories today. Thank you, Redwan, for joining us before you have to go. We really appreciate you just giving us a sense of what's possible when a leader in an organization decide, I'm going to make my organization a thinking environment where every person gets to do their best thinking and therefore be at their best and kind of my primary, every child and every adult is benefiting from that. Thank you, Redwan, and we look forward to the next conversation to hear you talk. The next opportunity, I do have to say to people, when I met Redwan 12 years ago, he had a story about himself that he is very shy and that he doesn't speak well. And I listen to Redwan speak now, I'm going, that story's changed slightly.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. The next story we're going to hear is Tracy Porter. Now, Tracy has always also been part of, we're going to hear from a few people who've been part of Partners for Possibility and then people who are not part of Partners for Possibility, but Tracy has been part of Partners for Possibility. She's an executive in the insurance world. She has just had a massive impact in the community that she's been working in. And I haven't heard Tracy tell the story, so I have heard Redwan tell his story many times. So I'm so looking forward to hearing Tracy's story. And Tracy, we are listening with delicious attention.
Thank you. The butterflies have just started in my stomach as you said that. Morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you. Just seeing one of my quite appropriate. I come from the finance industry. In the finance industry, we kind of don't share we don't do emotion, or we generally didn't do emotion. And so when I joined Partners for Possibility and I started doing time to think, I was like, this isn't going to work in my space. This does not work in my world. And I tried it a couple of times and it didn't work very well. And then COVID started affecting our world and lots of people started dying and we had to deal with their grieving families. And my colleagues and I, we started needing support. And so then when I started making space for, so we started having get-togethers, and the first thing we did is, how are you feeling? What are you doing? You know, and starting checking in with people. Sorry, my dog, every time I talk on Zoom, he decides that he's got to come along and it's been quiet the whole time. So anyway, so we had a meeting and we asked everyone how they were feeling. And, you know, the first eyebrow raises and the first gent looks at you as if to say, oh, this is crazy. And so I started, and what I've learned in this space is to be vulnerable, is to acknowledge exactly how you're feeling, no matter how painful it is, no matter how it's not meant to sound. So I was very open, and then my partner, Tillman, he was very open as well. And as we went around the group, the things that came out about how people were feeling, I was actually in tears. And you're sitting there and all of a sudden you've created a space where these people who, it is all about money, and we do chase money and we do chase that, but it all became about feeling and about how we feeling in this space. And someone admitted that they were using antidepressants, and it enabled us to then offer this person encouragement. And when they saw that we didn't judge them, it was such a powerful moment, because in our world you've got to be strong and you don't show that side. And then, okay, so that was in the workspace, and then please stop it. And then in the personal space, during the last lockdown, my nephew lived with my husband and I from the age of 16, from when he was 16. And he turned 20 and started his first, sorry about music. And he started his first year at university. And of course, the university wasn't ready yet for the link ups, the Zoom link ups. It was a bit crazy. So him and his friends all just dropped out. And so what happened was my husband and I were really busy working, and our nephew was getting more and more depressed and sleeping and being a pain. You know, he was just really, it was awful. And so then I thought, well, why don't we just sit down and have a family meeting where we use time to think, where we do the listening, and where everyone has a chance to say what they want. My husband thought I was crazy. And anyhow, what we ended up doing was we sat with Luke and we negotiated. And what was happening was, because we were working from home and he was bored, he needed something to do. And I said that as you're not, Muse, as you're not working outside and earning money, you have to pay for your board and lodgings. And my husband raises his eyebrow and he goes, Tracy, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. I said, no, it's not. Everyone has to play their part. Anyway, we negotiated that Luke had to make dinners and do the housekeeping. And anyway, so he did that, and then he went overseas. And he says that, and when all of this happened, he'd been really overweight and he started getting fit, and he ended up losing weight and turning our garage into a gym. All of this came about from time to think. All of this came about because instead of us going in and saying, this is what we want, this is how we want the family to look, none of us knew what we wanted it to look like. But when we gave Luke a chance to tell us how he could contribute, and then he was given the space to contribute, that's how it worked. So now I feel that the things that we use in time to think aren't just for work, and they're not just for home. It's something that now becomes integrated in normal life. I'm really sorry about Muse. I've thrown a pen and a pencil bag, and he doesn't like, he's voicing his opinion. And then in the last thing is, in 5 days, I went to 3 funerals. And 3 funerals is quite challenging. And at each of those, I tried to listen. And you know, in there about honoring the silence, well, grieving people, there's so much silence. And that silence is really, really, really difficult. I'm glad someone likes the dog contributions. I'm blushing. And I just kept thinking, got to start honoring that silence. And you know, when I sat there quietly, just sitting next to the grieving mother who's just lost her daughter, you know, she opened up her heart and she started speaking. And I learned more about how she felt in that moment than if I had been offering my condolences and offering what I thought we meant to say to someone who's just lost someone. So Louise, I know this isn't about reduction or money or anything, but these are 3 completely different everyday sides that I've applied in my life. And thank you. I'm so grateful that I learned these skills because it made me a kinder person than I was before. So I'm very grateful. And thank you for your attention, everyone. And bye, Muse.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And Muse did not bother us. We loved you and Muse, and everybody is just sharing their thoughts about that. Often we get feedback from people saying, I don't know what you're doing with him, but he's a nicer person. And I think Tracy is saying, and I'm a nicer person because I've been on this journey and I've had the opportunity to get access to this. So yeah, Tracy, thank you. That was such a reminder for us around, it's not about the big things, but it's the small things that actually ultimately contribute to the very big things. Because one of the things that always driven me is the idea that most organizations are not fit for human life. And what you are telling us is you've made your organization more fit for human life because you've created a space for people to just be and feel and get in touch with their own humanity. And everything I've been taught about time to think is that it is about creating a space for us to get in touch with our humanity. So the next story, thank you. We loved hearing your story. The next person we're going to hear from, and then we are going to go into our own thinking environment. We're going to go into small groups and have our own opportunity to think. But before we do that, I want to introduce you to Wade Groep. Wade is a colleague, a friend, someone who I have recently got to know better. He leads, or he's one of the leaders in an organization called the Youth and After School Program Office in Cape Town. They do phenomenal work. If you want to be inspired, hang with Wade and his colleagues. But Wade and I have been involved in introducing Time to Think to this community, and many young people and many adults working with young people. And I am so excited to hear Wade's story around how Time to Think has impacted him, the community he leads, the work that they do in schools. And then we're going to have a small group after Wade's spoken, and then we're going to get the opportunity to kind of move even more into the business community and hear some stories from business community. And I really want to encourage you, if you're inspired by any of these stories or struck by anything that anybody says, please feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. It's always nice to get some idea what people are thinking. Wade, over to you. We are listening with delicious attention.
Thanks, Louise, and good afternoon, everyone. I think when you asked me to give a little, share a little story, Louise, I thought, where do I start? And maybe Tracy's helped me a little. Because when I think about Time to Think, I must be honest that my initial encounter was met with a lot of personal, sort of natural skepticism. Or what is this fluffy stuff? We need to get the job done. And so I needed to open myself up to understand what this could mean, not just for myself, but also for the rest of the team. And I think I'll share a few lessons, Louise, and then I'll talk a bit about how we've leveraged it in our work. In our little earlier breakaway introduction, one of the speakers said that it's just about there's no time for this type of stuff. And I think that's the first misconception. I think that there is enough time, and that it's about being intentional about creating the time and the space to think. And that's why I think Nancy Klein's most infamous quote that we all are familiar with is that the quality of everything we do is dependent on the quality of the thinking we do first. Of course, we can do it, but have we really thought or spent time thinking about what we're doing, who we're doing it for, what are our assumptions, etc. Louise uses the term delicious attention. It is now a signature phrase in our office. And when people are not offering you delicious attention, you can almost certainly feel it. I think it is both wonderful as a recipient of delicious attention, like at the moment, all of you are giving me delicious attention, and it feels lovely to be listened to and to be able to share and allow me to have my thoughts go where it needs to go so that I can get my point across. I think that's really one of the things that Time to Think helps us do. But it's also lovely to give delicious attention, because I think it's an intentional act around being fully present and open to learning and wanting to learn. And it's like mining and knowing that you will find gold, that the gold is there. And you won't find the gold if you're not giving all your attention, if you're not doing the right things. So Louise challenged us when we had our session, and she said that you can't fully give someone attention and multitask. And in our office, we have a lot of can-doers and need to do, and all the time we need to get the ball rolling, and this is the deadline, etc. But as in the last couple of weeks, I've realized that actually it's not possible. If you are on your phone and you're texting or replying to someone's WhatsApp, or if you are currently on your computer and you have an email open there or a report open there, I can guarantee you that one of us is going to get more attention. It's either going to be your report or your email, or it's going to be me. And I think being intentional about how we use our devices in meeting and workspaces also impacts how people contribute and what they feel they can contribute. I think the other lesson I want to talk about is this idea of holding space for people to think, and being a thinking partner for someone, and allowing the thinking journey and trusting that the thinking journey will go in the right direction, because that is what quality thinking will do. It allows people to make sense, to stop and to say nothing, and to figure out what they actually want to say, and to connect the dots so that they can come back. And so the journey doesn't look as clean as you want it to look, but it might take the person on a very interesting thinking path, and then sharing that will provide you with a lot of interesting insights. I think in business and in a lot of our work culture, corporate, government, you name it, I think we always say in principle, but everyone's voice is welcome. People can share. The reality is our environments don't allow for that to come to life. And so the intern or the admin assistant at the front desk who sits in that staff meeting might never feel that their voice matters, because it's all just saying that, and the dominant voices will dominate. I mean, I'm one of them, and so I know that. And so it's about being intentional around creating thinking environments. And we've used this, and another colleague and I have worked very closely with Louise on how do you create a real thinking environment? How do you turn your weekly staff meeting or your monthly team check-in into a meaningful thinking environment where people are not just reporting on the stats and what they've done and what's coming up, but that it actually is an enriching learning space, and that people don't need to feel like I could have survived that via an email, but that their time is valued. I wrote this, and I know you'll smile, Louise. We had a training with a lot of our mentors from across the province, and we did thinking pairs with them. So we did thinking pairs with about 80 people, so 40 thinking pairs in one room. And if you ever want to experience joy, you need to be a spectator of seeing thinking pairs in action. Well-guided thinking pairs. It is, I think you can, once you've experienced it and you're able to create it for others, I think they come alive when you just give them the time, the genuine time to think. And so you can, through this process, gather unique experiences and perspectives and stories from people in your team that you didn't know existed, and see where the dots collide and where they don't collide, and start to see that maybe someone who's in the data team has something very valuable to add to the curriculum team, or that someone in the curriculum team is able to add very useful insights and ideas to the comms team. And that comes alive only when you are intentional and you create those intentional spaces. We've had a very tricky tech onboarding process, or getting buy-in around a technical app that we have over 3,000 of our youth using, and about 65% of them are using it and getting it right. But we really challenged with why it's not working for the other 35 and so we used this process, and we went on a journey over 3 to 3 to 5 weeks. And in that short space of time, the numbers have shifted significantly. And it was through a thinking environment where we could identify quick wins. What are how do we tap into the collective wisdom and see what people are passionate about, and how do we bring those ideas to life? And so different voices from different people started hopping onto this goal to get as many of our young people using the app. And it shifted significantly, Louise. We in the process of writing up how this has helped us get to that point, and hopefully it will get to the point where everyone's onboarded. And then I think one of the last points I want to share is that I think often in the midst of all the chaos and the messiness of society at the moment around the world, I guess Nancy Klein is quite right, is that it's easy for us to all buy into populist narratives or stereotypes or generalizations. But one way to overcome that is really to think for yourself. And Nancy Klein says, thinking for ourselves is a radical act. And I think it is radical. It's a lot more difficult to think for yourself than it is to say, no, but I agree with Louise. But I think if I've sat with Louise and I've really given myself the time to think about the same issue, I might not end up with the same conclusion. And it is that radical act and work that I think can change organizations and cultures. And I think it is not fluffy. It is not kumbaya, for lack of a better term. It's deep and it's meaningful and it's impactful when done intentionally. And forget the principal's surname, Ridwan. He said this thing about incisive questions. We need to ask the right questions so that we strip all those assumptions aside. And so huge thank you to you, Louise, for your mentorship on the journey and for taking and for holding space for my vulnerabilities around time to think, but also journeying with us through some of our tricky, complex challenges. And I hope that was helpful and insightful, and that people will leave this call wanting to have time to think sessions in their own organizations.
Wade, you are fabulous. I can't stop my smile. It's like going around my head to hear Ridwan and Wade and Tracy's story. And I'm going to shut up now and ask Rosie to kind of lead a bit of a reflection. Thoroughly enjoyed your story. Thank you so much, Wade. Rosie, over to you.
Yeah, Louise, I'm also smiling here from here to here. Wade, you talk about, I say people come back from thinking pairs a little bit taller, sitting a little bit more upright in their chairs from the experience. And we would love to hear from you. What struck you? We've heard from Ridwan, we've heard from Tracy and Wade. We have an opportunity to hear from a few people. What struck you about what you heard? And anybody who would like to, please unmute yourself and share what struck you as you listen to Ridwan and Tracy and Wade.
Can I just unmute myself?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll go. So specifically with Ridwan, I wanted to say that he wanted to share that image of the children and the thinking pairs. And I actually had opportunity, or my team and I had opportunity to actually, we've seen that image a few weeks ago and was so inspired by it that we are practicing time to think or thinking pairs. And I actually have, it's ingrained in us now so much. I had a time to a thinking pair arrangement with someone, a colleague at 12 when this started, and then I was like, should we cancel? And then we were like, no, let's just push it later. We're still going to have it because we don't want to miss out on it, but we're just going to move it. So something that, and then just that point that you think you're doing something you wanted to show us, but it actually did impact someone that I would have never met him, or I didn't know it was him. Just like, I made the connection when I saw the image, but it affected somebody in a different place and people. And so that's amazing, just the ability, the impact that this has when people apply it.
Yeah, thank you. Other reflections, what struck you?
Yeah, very briefly, we're a team of 12 at the National Mentorship Movement, and it occurred to me we meet every morning for half an hour, always chaired by one of the team, not by me, and there's always a check-in question, which often goes incredibly deep, and there's some really very meaningful conversations through very, very difficult times. And immediately when Ridwan spoke, it occurred to me what I need to do next week. Renewa is running next week's session, is for the first 10 to 15 minutes of that call, just ask somebody to be in that circle of courage and have every single person in the team to share what they appreciate about that individual. So one person a day over the next 2 weeks, just to show the appreciation and to make people realize what people appreciate about them. Because as we heard, people so often underestimate the impact they make, and particularly females, to be honest, tend to, it wasn't me. Yeah, everybody's like that. And to make them realize actually they're not. You're all special. You all have something different, and maybe you don't realize how big the impact is. So that's the action I wrote down, and I'm going to call Renewa after this and suggest we design a process to do that for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. Nancy talks about how difficult it is for us to take appreciation, We're like, oh, it's such a small thing, it wasn't me. And I kind of say to people, it's this thing where you say thank you. And you kind of stand in it and take it in and soak it in. And it takes us a while, but it's a practice of really sitting and soaking in the appreciation. Yay. Awesome. We've got an opportunity to hear from one more person. If anybody would like to share what struck them. Okay. Dina, I'm going to hand over to you for our next piece.
Thanks, Rosie. So you've all heard these wonderful stories of impact, and I think even Wade was saying it, and it was implied, I think, in all of the people speaking, that you've got to actually experience the thinking environment. So we're going to give you a chance to experience a little bit of a taster of a thinking pair, which is one of the building blocks of the thinking environment. What will happen is that you're going to be taken out into a breakout room with one other person, and you're going to each have 3 minutes to be able to think in the presence of somebody else's delicious listening and their generative attention. So when you get into that room, very quickly decide who's going to think first and who's going to listen first. And I have some questions here. Let me just put them in the chat. So these are the questions that you're going to ask. The person who's going to be listening first is going to ask the person who's going to be thinking, what would you like to think about and what are your thoughts? Please use only these questions and this exact wording for this. For this, take it as an experiment and do it in this particular way. For the person who's going to be thinking, please take this as an opportunity to think through something that is relevant, that is important to you, that is maybe unresolved in your thinking, something that you want to, that is not complete, that you still haven't figured out yet in your thinking. Not something that is already complete. Then the person who's going to be listening, this is a chance for you to demonstrate that delicious attention that everyone's talking about. So by delicious attention, we mean that you want to almost feel that what the person is saying is so delicious that you want to eat it up. You want to get closer to your screen. You want to listen with not just your mind and your head. You want to listen with your heart. You want to listen with your stomach You want to listen with your whole body. You want to digest what the person's saying. So really get very interested in what the other person is saying. It's also an opportunity to practice what you've heard about, that no interruption. So imagine that you've got a piece of duct tape over your mouth. It's going to be very hard, hurtful if you pull it off. So please, no interruption at all. And you're going to just pay this beautiful, delicious attention to the person who's thinking in your presence until they come to the end of their thinking and they say to you, I think I'm done. And when they say they're done, you're going to get an opportunity to ask the second question. And the second question is, what more do you think or feel or want to say? This is all in the chat if you want to have a look at it. Now, this question, what more do you think or feel or want to say, is like gold. Wade talked about gold. If we were mining for gold, this is the question that gets us deeper and deeper and deeper into our thinking. So please ask this specific question. Even if you think you've got a better question, ask this one, because it takes the thinking deeper. And then you're going to just apply that beautiful, delicious attention again until the person says, I'm done. In 3 minutes, I don't know if you're going to be able to even get a chance to ask this question. Some of you might get a chance to ask it even more than once, which is wonderful if you do. What I want you to do also is to make sure that you're timing yourself. It's very important that each person gets the equality of time. So it's going to be 3 minutes each. So when you start to think, time yourself for 3 minutes. When your timer goes off, if you're in the middle of a sentence, you can finish the sentence. You don't need to stop mid-sentence. You can finish your sentence, but please don't go on to the next sentence, because otherwise you're going to be eating into your partner's time. So once your 3 minutes is up, you're going to swap, and then you're going to do the same process with the other person. You're just going to swap roles. And at the end of the 6 minutes, when both of you have had a chance, you're going to then also have a chance to appreciate each other. We've heard about how appreciation is such an important part of the thinking environment. So you're going to just say one thing that you've noticed about this person, a quality in something that you have noticed about them that you'd like to appreciate. And then you're going to come back. We're going to bring you back into the room. So I hope that you all have this question, and Louise is going to put us into our thinking pairs now. Thank you. That and got a little bit of a taste of a thinking pair. So I'd love to just hear from a couple of people on what was your experience? What struck you about that experience of being in a thinking pair? And again, you can just unmute yourself if you want to speak.
Not enough time.
Never enough time. Yeah. It's just really, we wanted to give you just a taster of what people are talking about. Anybody else? I'm not seeing any hands, so I can't really see, but.
There you go. Tony Dealing is wanting to say something.
I just think what fascinated me is the applicability of this whole time to think program. My experience is with a principal in an underprivileged school, and I'm now dealing virtually with someone who's with food lovers in a family-owned business, and wondering how she can get the management team together. And I'm just thinking, wow, well, they've got to go they've all got to go on the time to think program, because it's so simple and so profound and so universal in its application, for me anyway.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tony. It is so simple, but it is so impactful. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's tough not to interrupt, not to want to clarify, not to give encouragement, not to suggest things. It's a discipline. It pays off because it gives the opportunity for the other to do this without judgment and without encouragement or anything else. But it's equally as difficult to be a listener in those situations.
Yeah, it's a muscle that we need to build. And it does take discipline. Thanks for that. I saw Viv. Viv, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to publicly apologize to Jashri, because what happened was suddenly I had taken up all the time, and she was very engaged and generous to be able to help me think through my particular issue. And I'm sorry that suddenly it was 6 minutes. I didn't realize that. So yeah, it was very useful engagement. Thank you.
Thanks, Viv, and thanks, Jayashri, for your generosity. In those 3 minutes, it is very, very short. And when someone is thinking, you want to sometimes just let them carry on with their thinking. So thank you so much. So I'd love to hear from so many more people, but we need to move on. And I'm just wondering, Louise, is Wiseman on the call yet?
Oh yes, we had him he came late and we were in the small group, and you do not want to miss this one. So I think you can hand over to Wiseman, Dina.
Oh, wonderful.
Just introduce himself. Introduce for Wiseman, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Wiseman Majosi he's been a business leader on Partners for Possibility, and he has a wonderful story to tell. He's from Mixed Telematics, and I'm just going to hand over straight to you, Wiseman, for you to tell us your story of impact.
Thank you so much, Dina. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Wiseman Majosi. So I did the Time to Think course during the COVID period. So when one looks back, you had the 21-day there, so you had to quite learn as much as you can in such a short space. But in terms of the impact and the role it has played for both my professional experience and life, because when one looks at the Time to Think, you have those 10 components of thinking, and you always find one that resonates with you. What resonated with me was the attention. Because when one is looking at the role I'm currently doing at my work, which is the business development specialist, so that roles involve always increasing the business for the company. And for you to increase business, you need to engage different stakeholders, customers, and it's more of a sales environment. And salespeople, they have this tendency of, we always want to close the deal now. We want, the more you speak, the more you appear as if you've got this, you know what's happening, you know what needs to be done. But that has always been the thinking, where the more you always, the one that is responding, it appears as if you know everything, you can solve this client's problem with ease. Whilst you come to Time to Think, where they say you need to listen. And then in my first course, I think, Louise, you were running outside. I looked at it, I'm like, So now I need to go and sit and not say anything, because that appears if you're not confident enough on whatever you're proposing. And but after a few courses, one looked at it and I was like, it actually worked, because when you look at the closing ratio in terms of deals, and it's something that I'm even practicing now, where the first meeting, I don't say anything to the client. The client would tell me, these are my challenges, this I want to solve, this is what I need. I don't even interject. You seek clarity, seeking questions without interjecting, or sometimes I have the response right there and there. But then I go back to whatever page in time to think and be like, it says you need to listen attentively. Don't listen with the intention to respond. So when when the client is done giving me whatever challenges they're facing, I don't respond immediately. I take all that info back, formulate a response to whatever that they need. And when I come back with the solution, I've created the suspense. It's some of the questions, it's something I could have resolved right there on the spot. But because I needed to make sure that I tick all the necessary boxes, I want to make sure that the client felt heard, not someone talking over them or jumping in. That first meeting for me was for that customer to get out whatever challenges they're currently facing. The next meeting is for me to say, Mr. Client, it's time for you to listen to me. And when one looks at one's performance from the first period before joining Time to Think and PFP and post, first period, the results were good, but not great. And then when you look at post, I even got the Superstar Award because of the performance that has been done. I did not do anything much different, but it was more of looking at the 10 components. I identify which one really can move me from wise man that is super confident, that can respond to questions that have not even been asked and jump on it, to wise man that is conservative, listen to whatever challenges is being faced. And I can also say, even for one's personal life, I think my wife always says I listen more now. I'm like, yeah, you need to go to a time to think, but she's happy. But it's not something where you just open up and shut. I've done few postgraduate education myself, MBA, ALES, but when one is looking at the time to think, it's more of an inward looking type of learning where you're learning about yourself as an individual and how you approach. Because as one grows, we exposed to different type of things and we think this one works, this one does not work. But we hardly have that opportunity to sit back and be like, do I ever have time to myself to mind my thoughts, monitor my thoughts, understand before I say whatever I'm going to respond with, what impact will that have on the next person? Because like I've said, the more energetic you are in front of that customer, he's going to think whatever you're saying, it's just being a sense person. Try and create your own differentiating factor where you don't operate like the next salesperson that you saw the other day, then the previous one and the previous one. Have your own unique approach where you understand, you listen to them, and you give them the opportunity and the platform to vent whatever that they need. I see, Louise, I still have a minute. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to take those clarity-seeking questions. But for me, the personal development, I can't associate it with any of the academic institution one has attended, because in the academic world, you learn something, you need to reproduce it in the form of an exam, whilst time to think in every being of yourself, you always exposed to it. Even when you're sitting alone, when you're sitting with your kids, to a point, when I get home, I've got a 4-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old. As I'm changing clothes, I ask, how was your day? What did you do in school? And go to the 7-year-old. And then they ask me back, how was work? You still sit in those meetings. So it has become some of our culture where one now needs to create that environment. I say, Louise, you have a question.
I don't have a question. I am bursting with excitement is all I'm saying. I'm loving your story, Wiseman.
Thank you so much. So guys, it's one of the most exciting opportunities and causes. Like I'm saying, not just for professional environment, for your personal development, and you become aware of everything around you, and to a point you can pinpoint to which of the 10 components of time do you think is this one. Is it feeling, is it attention, is it information, and all of those things. Then without taking much time, you know, I can talk for almost 30 minutes. That's my job.
Thank you so much, Wiseman. That is so inspirational. And, you know, there's a theme for me that's coming through with all of the speakers. And that's like, there was initial skepticism. And then what made you guys kind of put it into practice, and then to see such wonderful results, that you actually become like a star performer. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Wiseman. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Tina. And guys, good luck. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. So now we're going to move on to Jayshree Dexter from LegalWise. And I get so excited when an organization decides to take on time to think as a way of being, and you know, using time to think and creating thinking environments in the organization. So Jayshree, we'd love to hear your experience and your story.
Yes, thank you. Gosh, you know, where to start? So let me see, my 5 minutes. You know, I was exposed to time to think through our organization. It goes without saying our organization is completely taken by it. We are completing the course and also getting, you know, completing the facilitator course. But to share my story is that I'm so blown away by the fact that I only, for some reason, only really recently realized it, that Time to Think was actually written in 1999, and we're in 2022. So, I mean, that's like more than 20 years later, we're cottoning on to this. I mean, for its time when it was written, it was so forward thinking. It is a personal journey for me. I really enjoyed it. So we were introduced to Time to Think, and we had Louise do a quick masterclass for us for our organization, and she was grateful enough to do it and accept. And you know, I watched that, and she, I think, unknowingly is actually a mentor of mine, because I was in an environment where, you know, people talk psychological safety, and I didn't know it back then, but that's what it was. There was such safety in being able to speak, being heard, and also listening. And I so wanted to continue to experience that, to give that to the people I lead, the people in my family, my friends, the environment. And I wanted to give that and receive it as well, especially as a leader and a coach. So, you know, when you are coaching someone or as a leader and somebody comes to you, you feel the need to have all the answers, because, you know, you need to tell them. And I've had to learn, and that was something that I've taken back, in letting the person speak, or the other person speak, and letting them come up with the answer, because I don't really know what the actual quote is, but I know the mind that has the problem or the question holds the key to the answer or the solution. And that struck with me. The soft eyes in the Zoom sessions I took away with me, because, you know, I felt this need to just be like, always, I need to show the people on the other side that I'm listening and I'm here and I'm present. And I learned to practice that. And the last thing that's most important for me is that safety. So we're practicing thinking pairs. And in a thinking pair, I am practicing, not interrupting people, and it was an issue with me. And through a thinking pair, I actually figured out why I was doing what I was doing. And, I linked it back to my childhood and how I felt unheard and unexpressed. And now I feel the need to constantly speak. So through that thinking pair, I was able to change myself and have realizations and self-realization. It just leads you to be a better person, a better leader, a better human being. And this concept is so far-reaching, and it's growing, and I can't wait to continue practicing it, because I do see a change. I see a change in my relationships with my people and my family and myself. And it's actually through those thinking pairs, I've now gone from changing myself and being a better person to a career. And it's having this domino effect in everything else. So it's just amazing. And yes, Louise, I can continue speaking, but I will hold back. But I think I've shared the crux of what really stuck with me. Thank you. And thank you, Louise and Dina, obviously. Yeah.
Jayashree, thank you so much for that. When you're speaking, just like so many of the others that we've heard, it just really, what struck me about what you said is how it has impacted you as a person, and then you take that into all the other aspects of your life. And I just loved that Lisa, which is a sister organization to Legal Wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Lisa actually had a conference, and they ran that whole conference in a thinking environment. It was beautiful. Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you, Dina. They want more, so yeah, we're trying to get that going. Thanks. You left us wanting more. Thank you, Dina.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jayashree. Okay, so you've heard quite a lot, and I'm sure you have your own stories, or you want to also bring your voices into the conversation. So I'm going to hand over to Rosie to set us up for small group conversation.
Thanks, Tina. Sure, yeah, so much to say and not enough time. It's a beautiful way to spend a Friday afternoon in this glow of the thinking environment. There's an opportunity now to reflect on what you've heard so far in our time together. And in true thinking environment style, in the breakaway rooms, you're going to have 7 minutes to practice the components of attention, equality, so ensuring that everybody gets an equal turn, but also ease. How can we be easeful with each other in the breakaway room and pay that delicious attention that everybody keeps talking about and that you've experienced in the thinking pairs, hopefully. So Louise is going to open the breakaway rooms. They're 7 minutes. Looking forward to seeing you after that.
What a group of people to hang out with. That's all I want to say. Wow.
I'm trying to be that person who's not yanked out of breakaway rooms anymore and to leave by just, choosing to leave. So we had such a great conversation in our room. We'd love to hear from some of you, the highlights from your conversation, anything that struck you, anything you want to share in the bigger group. We've got about 5 minutes. Anyone who would like to share? Wade, I saw you unmuted. You want to, and then Kali. Oh, okay.
No. Sorry, I forgot to mute myself.
Okay. Wade, please go ahead.
So we had Kalipa in our group, and she's going to share her story with all of you in a moment. So we made her intentionally not share it with us. But we had an interesting conversation, and I was with Viv. And I thought I'd share this. I didn't share it in the platform earlier. And it was this question, Louise, that I chatted to you about around, if you are a dominant, confident contributor in a team, it is often the ways the system has been developed and designed is that it gives us preferential airtime. Whether we want it to take it or don't want it, the system rewards us for that. And so it is our responsibility as people who are able to contribute and who have voice to be intentional about creating equality of voice. And to balance that out with quieter voices, agency to think and contribute as well. And so it's not that we shine the spotlight on quieter voices in the room. It's about how we create space that they feel safe enough to contribute if they so choose, because that's their responsibility. Nancy Klein says, you can't abdicate the responsibility to think. And so everyone has to do it. It's not just for the loudmouths and the contributors like myself. And I think it's connected to Jayshree's point around when you grow up in an environment where you feel your voice is suppressed. So it's also taught me that, Jayshree, that actually I was just a child whose voice wasn't always listened to. And so now I need to fight harder to get my voice out. And that I don't need to in a time to think environment. And so that was just an insight that I thought I'd share.
Yeah. Rosie, can I just say, I love Wade and I love the fact that he's developed all these insights, and I just want to hug him at this moment, but I can't, so I'll have to hug him some other time. Thanks, Wade. You are bringing so much joy to my heart. I can't tell you.
A virtual hug, Louise. You could send him a virtual hug, and I saw some hugs there. And Wade, I love what you say, because in the rounds, right, you're guaranteed a turn, and you can choose not to take it. And it's it's the gift of the opportunity, and then having a decision whether you want to use your voice or not. Thank you so much for that. Anybody else want to share?
Just quickly to add to that, about the rounds and needing to pass. We were having a meeting and we were having a round, and it was my turn, and then I passed. And then after a while, when we came back around, then I did have something to say. Where ordinarily, it allowed me that safety, that time to think, okay, what do I want to say? And then eventually I did actually have something to say. So yes, that safety of knowing that, I don't have to go first if I want to, although I'm usually the one who always goes first, and I'm practicing to not do that. But yes, just that opportunity to pass is brilliant, Rosie. Thank you.
Thanks, Jayshree. Dina, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce Khalipa. She didn't get a chance, and now we're all waiting to hear.
Well, I'm also waiting to hear, because I haven't heard Khalipa's story. And welcome to Khalipa Ramatlape. She is a business leader with Partners for Possibility, and she works at Mediclinic. And I'm the supervisor to her coach in the program, and her coach just keeps on telling me all these wonderful things about what Khalipa's doing at Mediclinic with Time to Think. So I can't wait to hear your story, Khalipa. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to share my story. But in a corporate setting, you take credit, but at the same time you ask yourself, is it really all out of my work, or there are other factors that came on board? But nonetheless, I'll take some of the credit and share my story. Bit of a long story. I was told I must do this in 5 minutes, and knowing me and my big mouth, I'll try and be as fast as I can so that it will take much of your time. I'm Khalipa. I'm a wife, a former educator. Used to teach maths and science. Now an employee at Mediclinic Forum. I'm mentioning all these aspects of my life because they've either shaped me to be who I have been, and then Partners for Possibility through Time to Think, then transformed me. When you think of transformation in a corporate setting, we're thinking racial transformation, how many blacks, But this has been my internal transformation, because I've gone through, I won't say 360 degrees, because it means I'm back at the direction I was facing, but I've done 180-degree turn in who I have become, to the point that my husband is asking me, who is this wonderful woman that I'm now sitting with? Because believe you me, looking back, I can say I was such a horrible partner in our space as husband and wife. You'll hear my stories. Okay, let me first start by me as being a product of my education. We all know the history of the country. We all know that the quality of education in the Black setting has not been as good as on the other side. That's part of our history, which we are all privy to. Let me tell you how we were taught as kids. And I think that's where this whole notion of who I then became started. We were taught in a way that the teacher would start a sentence and then the group must complete the sentence. During photosynthesis, a plant takes in what? And then we go, we finish the sentence, and then it releases, let's finish the sentence. To me, Kalipa then as a child, I thought that was the way of conversing with people. You finish people's sentences, you jump ahead of them before they say it to show you are clever in class, impress the teacher, you know the answer before even the question is asked. So that was me as a child. I think this became so embedded in me or ingrained in me that even now in a wrong setting, when people are talking, believe me, even in church, as the preacher is preaching, I'll be finishing his sentences in my head and what's next. That's how horrible I was. Now, this has been very irritating for my husband, because before he finishes a sentence, I'm already saying what is because, and he's like, no, I'm not going to say that. Wrong again. And of course, the discussion would immediately go south, because I'm not this, not that he wanted to tone me to be an obedient wife, but to just have a civil conversation with someone. But here I was, and I want to blame it on how I was trained in my upbringing, because I was trained the teacher that I'm clever, I can finish sentences. In the meantime, in the adult world, that is horrible. So, again, me as a teacher, having been teaching this subject, so I would be, so if a child says at the end of the lesson, I don't understand, I'm like, where did I lose you? And they would say, no, you lost me 10 minutes into the lesson. And I'm like, and then you kept quiet, you didn't stop me, because I expected to be stopped so that I can explain further. And now you're telling me at the end of the lesson, how am I going to be explaining this concept of vectors and whatever. So I think, again, that shaped who I became, that if I don't understand you as you are in the middle of sentence, I stop you right there. And I tell you, reverse, you've lost me. Maybe I owned my space too much, to the point that I became a nuisance in conversations. And my husband would say, you are such a bad listener. And I would hate that, because I'm thinking, the fact that I'm engaging with you means I'm listening to you. Now you're telling me I'm a bad listener. If I keep quiet, then it's like I'm ignoring you. Long story short, having been told constantly for the past 30 years by my husband how bad of a listener I was, and I listened to answer, I don't listen to understand, I listen to defend myself from the get-go. I don't even know where the conversation is going. So that's who I was. But then, thank God, I was exposed to Partners for Possibility through Time to Think. I must say that was a revelation in my head. That was an aha moment. I was like, oh my goodness. Clearly, I have been violating people's space for all these years without even knowing. I have been undermining people to assume I know what they want to say before they even say it. I have been disrespectful to the people in terms of their space and. Believe you me, I wanted to go back to my husband and say, you were right after all for the past 30 years. But the proud Kalipa in me was like, I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. I'm not going to do that. But ultimately I did. And he was like, thank God, finally, we will be able to hold a civil conversation without you getting in and all of that. And I had to train myself to listen, to understand, listen with a palpable respect, so that the person feels that I'm giving them the respect and I'm with them in the conversation, not listen to answer, not listen to defend, and give them equal opportunity and all of that. Now I'm going to try and cut my time, because I think I've already finished the 5 minutes, because I want you guys to hear this part. Now I'll come back to my work. I work with doctors. Mediclinic is big at doing surveys to establish where doctor engagement is at in their hospitals. Are the doctors satisfied and all of that? So having applied what I've been learning through Partners for Possibility, I've been actually applying it even within my workspace, besides now in my private space as Caliper. And I would be, giving the doctors the space that they need and engage them in a civil manner, because now at least I know what is the right way to do all these things. Believe you me, a survey was recently done, and Medforum was amongst the top hospitals in terms of doctor engagement, how doctors view management as listening to their opinions and incorporating them in decision making and communicating in a manner where they feel respected and valued. We got the highest scores. Our score for doctor engagement and other aspects was so high that it even beat international standards or levels in terms of doctor engagement in other international facilities. We were high in the South African context. We were high in the Tswana context. We were even high in terms of international standards. And my boss was saying, Caleb, I don't know what you're doing with these doctors. You're doing amazing work. We were at the top. Okay? Again, I give credit to what I've learned through Partners for Possibility. We are also big as a company on doing surveys on your voice, again, done by Press Gain International, whereby they measure how staff feels they're listened to, they are taken seriously by the company, and believe you me, my team, my unit, gave our unit 5 out of 5 in terms of their voice being heard, because now I'm very alert towards hearing people's voices and not just pushing my own agenda. We use the tools also even in our meetings. I've got two staff members, one very quiet and one very loud. The loud younger one dominates the discussions. So I would then use some of the tools to just say, to enforce the notion of you need to give each other equal time and all of that, listen and all of that. And we even spoke about, I shared with them a tool that I took from Stephen Covey, which is the talking stick, that in the event that someone is dominating in the discussion, you pass the stick around. When it's your turn, we shall all keep quiet. As long as the stick is not in your hand, you'll keep quiet. There were times in my past life I would be fighting for that bloody stick because I wanted to talk more than others. But believe me, I'm now at peace. It's okay. It's important to value and respect other people's space. Thank you so much. And again, this is applied with my partner, Victor, in our setting within the project. And yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Oh, Kalipa, it's been an absolute honor to hear your story. I'm so inspired, and again, just touched by the personal and the personal transformation, and then how you brought that into your workspace and the amazing impact that has had. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Louise.
How do we, I don't know how does one cope with so much joy? I mean, my blood is bubbling through my body at the moment. Thank you so much for everybody who shared their stories. I'm sure that you feel like I do. I'm just so thrilled. My job here is to just express appreciation. Kalipa, I can listen to you for the whole day. Wade, Jayshree, Redwan's no longer with us. Wiseman, Tracy, you have just made our days, weeks, months, wherever. But I want to now, we know from Time to Think that the appropriate ratio between appreciation and criticism is 5 appreciations for every 1 criticism. And we need to learn how to appreciate people and acknowledge what they've given to us in a particular moment. So I want to open the floor and create a space for appreciation. And we're appreciating Rosie, Dina, all of the people who contributed, the people that you were in the small group with. You can do that in chat if you want to, but we would love to hear your voice. And all you need to do is just unmute yourself, and we're just going to bring some voices into the room. So please don't hold back when you have something to say in terms of appreciation. And we're going to just sit here and wait for appreciations to come.
Maybe I'll start.
Sarah,
I think I appreciate the honesty, the vulnerability, and the talking from the heart. And those are the things that move me, and I think move people, because it's the heart space, and that shows the genuineness and the learning. And I want to just say thank you for taking the time, to everybody for sharing their stories. And that is the inspiration that we take forward. And many things are possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I want to say thank you, Sarah, for your delicious listening. I was watching Sarah when people were talking, and she was like hanging off the every word. And part of the stories were more joy, brought more joy because of Sarah's beautiful listening and many other people's beautiful listening. Thank you, Sarah. It's always wonderful to have you with us. Anybody else want to share words of appreciation? Lots of appreciation being shared in the chat. Rosie and Dina, maybe we should give you a chance to also, from your heart, share some appreciation. Rosie, I see you unmuted.
It's been a full week, and I've already said just my heart is bursting with appreciation for the sense of community that's been built in the time we've had together, the stories, but also the openness, the open hearts. And so I'm leaving energized on a Friday afternoon for the rest of my day and the weekend. And that's my appreciation to everybody, because we co-create this space together.
You know, as a Time to Think facilitator, you have the one day, and you often don't get to hear the stories past that day. And it's just so beautiful. It gives me so much joy to know that this is how people are applying it. And even the skeptical ones that are giving you a hard time in the workshop, going, this can never work in my environment, that actually, you know, you never know what it's going to do if they do decide to be brave enough to apply it. So I just think this world will be a better world with the thinking environment. And I just thank every single one of you who are here for participating today. Thank you. And thank you, Louise, for setting this up.
Hopefully this won't be the last time. We just got a message this morning, Dina, about one of your clients who said they're willing to tell their story, and can't wait for that moment too. So thank you, everybody, for your for joining us. We would obviously love to hear your thoughts, and we'd love to hear your feedback, and we'd love you to join us in this community of people who just love time to think and creating environments for other people to do their best thinking. Part of this work is around how do we create organizations that are fit for human life, and I'm going to invite you to go out and show loving compassion by creating spaces where people can think best for themselves. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend with your loved ones, and we'll see you at our next conversation.
Bye, everybody.